Now, on our feedback, we have marks out of five stars. What would you give us?
Oh, 5.
5.
Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to our webinar tonight from expatsportugal.com, where you can, of course, become a member. If you're seeing this on the recording on YouTube, do become a member at expatsportugal.com and join our community there. This evening, we're talking about the quirks of buying property in Portugal, and no better person to speak to about this than Daniel Reis, our favorite lawyer in Lisbon. How are you tonight, Daniel?
I'm quite all right, thank you. And what about yourself?
I'm pretty well, yes. If I'm going to be completely transparent, I'm fairly fresh, if that's the right word to use, from a snooze in the sun. I fell asleep in the garden. So if you're wondering why one side of my face is red, it's because of that. Enjoying the Portuguese sun this afternoon on the Silver Coast. Daniel, are you in Lisbon this evening?
Yep, I'm in the Lisbon office. The sun is coming out, but the majority of the day was a bit cloudy. So the summer is still picking up speed, but in a few days, I think that we'll have the full-blown Portuguese summer, hopefully.
Yes, brilliant. And you say our office in Lisbon because you have others?
Yeah, we do have offices in down in Algarve, in Faro, and one other office in Porto. So we do cover the country from top to bottom, especially because we deal with a lot of property deals, and there's the necessity of having a lawyer nearby the property of or where our clients are going to buy. So that's why we distributed our forces with a law firm in 2-3 places, because it just makes sense to have a lawyer in the vicinities of the property that the clients do end up buying. And it's the strategy has been good because we are able to cover the country from top to bottom without the necessity of having frequent travels.
Yeah, I thought, though, you might be in Porto tonight. A big party, the biggest party in Europe, they're saying this evening. One of my insiders tell me it's going to be a big night. What's happening in Porto tonight, Daniel?
Well, people do get crazy with São João in Porto, and you have the plastic hammers. Everyone will be hammering the head of the neighbor, and it gets crazy. A lot of beer, so it's something to see. If you are in Porto tonight, get out and go into the street and enjoy yourself, because it's a really good party.
Fantastic, and some people might be needing a lawyer by the sound of it tomorrow morning.
Well, hopefully for good reasons, that they just found the perfect street or perfect property to buy, and not that they got arrested by something that they did.
Thank you for bringing me back on track. We are talking about the quirks of buying property in Portugal tonight.
Yes.
And there are some, just as people are getting over possibly the quirks of the real estate business, buying a property, there are a few things that are a little bit different here in Portugal when it comes to the buying process as well, and dealing with you in tying up all the legal side of it. So let's kick off straight away. I know other questions will come in, and please do ask them in the chat. Somebody might mention the golden visa at some point, and I'm sure you'll be happy to answer questions. But the main thing is the process here and how it might be different here in Portugal compared to what you're used to, for example, in the US or the UK. So over to you then with the first of the quirks, if you will.
Well, I'll not start with the quirks, but with the golden visa, as you touched the topic and the subject. Yes. The last time that we were together in the morning program, I did say that CEF was not accepting any new applications, but now, fortunately, CEF did resume the applications. It was a past Monday, not this one, but the other one, they started accepting new applications again. So the web portal is reopened, and this is good news because we are submitting the applications that were pending from the 1st of January until now. So it is good news. Things are picking up speed, although for the biometric data collection, they're still not open and available. But it seems like a good and positive sign in terms of the Golden Visa program. So let's wait that the next time that we'll speak, the bookings will be resumed, and the things will get back to normal. Regarding the topic of this program, The first thing that I would like to point out is that in Portugal, we don't have escrow accounts. This is something that US and UK clients do usually request and are accustomed to have once they buy property in their own countries, but this is not the reality here in Portugal. So usually all the money will be transitioned from the client's account, the account that they'll open here in Portugal, into the seller's account. On the first stage, once you are signing the promissory note or the promissory purchase agreement, or as we call it here in Portuguese, it's the CPCV. If you see written CPCV anywhere, it's the contract that binds the parties together. It's the promissory note. And to do the down payment of that contract, usually the down payment is 10 to 15%, depending on what was agreed upon, although nothing is written in the law. So this can be negotiated back and forth with the seller and the buyer. But as we don't have escrow accounts, the money will be all transitioned from the buyer here into the seller's account. Although in some specific situations, we do have a client's account in our office that if the client that is buying the property was not able to open an account in a timely fashion, he can transfer the money to our client's account and we'll do the payments on behalf of the client. So do not expect that in Portugal you will find escrow accounts or title companies. So this is something quite common in the US, and is something that US clients do find funny. There's no title companies here. It's all done in the old-fashioned way with a notary. So the job that the title company usually has in the US will be usually done by lawyers or solicitors here in the country. And we are the ones that will assess the documentation, that will see if the property is indeed transactionable, if no pending or pending legal problems are due. And we usually, once we are assessing a property on behalf of our clients, we do produce a report on the company or on the property documents, and we will deliver that report to our clients, so the client will know what he is buying. And this is, from my perception from contacting clients all over the world, the usual job that the title company has. Notaries are the ones that will do the transition of the property from the seller to the buyer. Although in Portugal, lawyers can do that as well. I prefer in the office not to do it because notaries are specialized. They studied for quite a few years to do that. The deeds is the job that the notary does the most. So I do think that this job should be attributed to notaries instead of lawyers. And this is something that we usually don't do here at the office. Once a client wants to buy a property, we'll do the report, we'll accompany all the procedure, but the deed itself, we hire the services of a notary to do it because it's the safer way to have it done.
Okay, so it's not in any way a disadvantage, it's just a different way of doing things.
Yes, it's a different way of doing things, and what I usually transmit to the clients once I'm having the initial call, once the client wants to hire our services, is that it does work in a different way, but the end result is the same. So the property will be assessed in the same fashion. The legal bureaucracies will be done by a professional, not the title company, but the lawyers. And the final result is the same, buying a property without any legal problems attached to it. That's basically it.
Excellent. Okay. And so to clarify there, the CPCV, more commonly known as the promissory note, and that is something people learn when they start buying property in Portugal. They learn about this promissory note. Can you tell us more on how offers work with that, and how binding this situation is, and what people are letting themselves in for when they get to that stage? Yeah, well, the first thing that I usually convey is that offers in Portugal are not binding. So you can do an offer to the realtor or to the property owner, but if you decide to back off, that's totally fine, not a problem, no harm done. It was just an offer that, even if it was accepted by the seller or the realtor, if the buyer does decide to back off, totally fine, and no legal consequences will come out of it. Oh. On the other side, once you do sign the CPCV or the promissory notes, this is a binding document. And the way the document is structured is
the following. If the buyer decides to back off the deal, you will lose the down payment. So if you consider a property of 300K and you have a down payment of 10%, 30K, and for some odd reason the buyer decides to back off, you will indeed lose the 30K. So that's why the document is binding to the buyer. But binding as well to the seller, because if the seller decides by any reason not to sell and he found someone else that is offering more money, you will need to return the down payment in double. So in this scenario, you will need to return the 30K initially paid plus a penalty of 30 more K, because the property will not be sold into that buyer. This is what makes the contract binding, because if any of the parties does default and does not follow through with the contract, they will have a 30K penalty, or 30K or more. It's usually 10%. And this is why I usually do transmit to the clients that having a low down payment is not the smart choice to have, because if you do have a down payment of 5K on a property that is $500,000, if the seller decides to sell to someone else that put more money on the table, it will compensate to break the contract, even if he needs to return the initial 5K plus a penalty of 5 more K. Yeah. But the 10% rule of thumb is a good one, because it usually discourages the sellers into breaking the contract. For a $500,000 property, they'll have a down payment of 50K, and this will mean that they will need to pay the penalty of 50K if they decide not to sell. And it's an equilibrium result, the 10%. Although, as a negotiation technique, the buyers may want to put more money in the table as a down payment, for instance, 20%. Try to expedite things and to try to have the deal done as fast as possible, or even the property price reduced. So this is something that if the client has the money in cash to buy the property, in some specific situations, I do advise the client to do an offer with a higher down payment to try to expedite things, but this will depend on deal to deal. So in short, offer is not binding, the CPCV, the promissory note, is. And the usual penalty is you'll lose the down payment if you decide not to buy, or the seller, if he decides not to sell, you will need to pay the down payment in double. And that this is what makes the contract binding. And this is a bit different from what I perceive as the reality, for instance, in the US, because the offer is binding, unless in the property inspection, something horrible is found, and then people, or the buyer and the seller, can negotiate the price. This is actually not the case here in Portugal, and this is why, and this is the other quirk of the property purchase here in Portugal. This is why I do advise all clients that want to do a property inspection to do it before the promissory note is indeed signed. Because if the person doing the inspection of the property does find something that is really that lowers the price of the property, or that was not disclosed by the sellers, as the offer is not binding, it's the correct time to back off or negotiate the property price. If, on the other hand, you do sign the promissory purchase agreement and then you do the property inspection, you'll find a big resistance from the sellers into renegotiating the price, or into you backing off the deal. So the rule of thumb is, if you want to have a property inspection, by all means do it. Hire an engineer or an architect. We, the lawyers, we don't do property inspections in that sense. And the property should be inspected after the offer is accepted. So the offer is put down, some negotiation goes back and forth, it is finally accepted by the seller, and once the offer is accepted, the property should indeed be inspected. And if everything pans out, if everything is correct, we then jump into the promissory note or promissory purchase agreement, because we are sure that all the property are covered. The legal department with our evaluation, and on the structural and the engineering and architectural side with the engineer and architect that may do the property inspection. And this is the safest way to do it, and the correct way, in my opinion, to do the procedure. First offer, second property inspection, and third step is indeed the promissory note.
Very good. And am I right in thinking that inspection isn't as common in Portugal as it might be?
No.
Okay.
It is indeed something rare. People are not used to do it, especially because I think it's a question of the financial capability of the day-to-day Portuguese citizen, because having a property thoroughly inspected, it is, I would say, an expensive service, but it does bring peace of mind once you are buying a property, because you know a professional assess the property and no hidden situations will occur, or at least the possibility of having hidden situations will not occur. This is quite common in the US and in the UK, but especially in the US because there's a lot of houses that are built with wood frames, and you have the termite problems and all that. So the US mentality towards property inspections, this is a given. It must occur. It must happen. And I probably never had, or never is a strong word, but the majority of my US clients do have the property inspected before they buy it, and I do think that it makes sense. Yeah, I do recommend it because it's we had situations that the property was inspected and that the buyer decided to back off the deal because he realized that it was not indeed a good deal, and that you would have to do some refurbishment that would cost some money that he was not expecting. So to avoid surprises, if it's not a recent construction, when I say recent construction is from the last 10 years, give or take, so from 2010 onwards, I would say that the property should indeed be inspected by an engineer or an architect.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because we hear of people who start working with real estate agents. They might speak to the vendor or the seller of the property, and they will be quite surprised when the buyer says, "Oh, I'd like to do an inspection." And in local culture, it might be, "You don't need to do that. We don't bother with that." But you would suggest sticking your heels in, digging your heels in, and say, "Well, actually, I do want to do that," and go ahead.
Correct.
Not to be
well, the buyer is the one that has the money, and he is calling the shots. So that's if the buyer wants to have the property inspected, he should indeed have it. There is a small risk, though, and this has happened in one situation of a case that I was accompanying, that the offer was submitted, it was indeed accepted, the property was inspected, but as the report was being produced of the property that was inspected, someone came with more money and they bought the property, and this was a nuisance because the client already spent money on that property inspection. You have this risk, but the risk of buying a lemon, a property that has not the proper conditions or that had hidden problems because of the seller not wanting to disclose something on the architectural side, I think it does compensate the risk of having a property inspected and you, at the end of the day, losing the possibility of acquiring that property. But it is a risk, it is a well-thought risk. And if the report is produced quickly, or at least just a general opinion that you can buy the property, everything is good, I will produce a thorough report in a week. But from my end, I haven't detected, the property inspector, from the inspector's side, if he doesn't find anything horrible and he gives the green light, we can then move quickly into the promissory note or the promissory purchase agreement and secure the deal for the client.
Brilliant. And in our business directory, of course, you'll find people who can help you with inspection, including Thomas, our very own Thomas from the Ask Our Expats team, and his firm Rehabilitatio are in the Rehabilitatio area. And of course, if somebody is inspection resistant, that might give you a little bit of a clue as well.
Yeah. Yes. That's the red flag. It's an immediate red flag. Yes, okay. If they say, well, this is fair game. If they say, I won't hold the offer, if someone comes with more money, I will sell the property to person or to someone that does the promissory note faster. This is fair game in the real estate market. I don't take this as not being ethical or professional about the selling of a property. But if they do refuse adamantly to have the property inspected, then this is a brutal red flag for me. And I would tell straight away to the client, back off from this deal. This is going to be problematic.
Very good. Okay, we got lots of great questions coming in, which is excellent. And there's a chance after the recording to ask questions of a more personal nature that you might not want to share on YouTube and with the rest of the world. So you can do that. And that tells you really that if you want to ask a personal question of our experts that are here with us week after week on the webinar, it's to join us live. And you can do that, book in via our website, expatsportugal.com. Marty P sending greetings from Alaska. And I have to share this with you now.
Hello.
Daniel and his law firm are currently assisting me with a property purchase. I cannot praise him and his associates enough. And he's even learned a bit of Portuguese to share with you. Ótimo!
Yes.
For you.
Thank you, Martin.
Have we covered everything in terms of promissory agreement, how that works, and the binding nature of it, and perhaps maybe a little bit on the percentages?
Well, the percentages of the down payment, correct?
Yeah.
Well, it's the usual norm in Portugal, as I said, it's about 10%. In some situations, you can go as high as 20%, but this all can be negotiated. If the seller wants a down payment of 50% and the buyer is willing to do it, no harm done. This can be totally put into the contract. Although, if a buyer is putting 50% of the property as a down payment, I would have the contract with a short time window, with a short interval, because there's a lot of money in stake. Or one of the solutions that we sometimes do in some specific deals is to register the promissory note or the promissory purchase agreement within the land registry in Portugal. In this, automatically will do publicity that there is a promissory note or promissory purchase agreement signed, and that the parties are just waiting for a loan or waiting for some specific situation to occur to have the final deed done. So if it's more than 20%, I would recommend registering the promissory note or the promissory purchase agreement, because basically what will happen is that if someone else wished to buy the property, and if the seller was trying to sell the property twice and just disappearing with the money, this provides publicity, or the registering of the promissory note provides publicity to everyone that will consult the land registry of the property. And this is something that we always consult before any promissory notes are indeed signed.
Okay.
The other topic that I wanted to touch would be the loans and the evaluation of the properties and risk assessments and all that. So the clients do find a bit odd that if they have the collateral, if they are doing the mortgage, they still need to have a life insurance in Portugal. And this is a reality for loans up to, if my memory stands correct, 50 or 60%. If the bank is lending more money than 50 or 60% until 80%, that's usually the maximum, they will wish to have a life insurance, because if someone passes away, the house will be fully paid with that life insurance, and the heirs of the person that bought the property will have the property without any mortgages whatsoever. But this is a quirk that usually clients do find a bit odd, because if they say, well, I've put 20 or 30% as a down payment of the property, I'm getting the rest being financed, the bank has the collateral, why do I need to pay an expensive life insurance? And usually life insurances are quite expensive if you are 55 above. And in some specific situations, I've seen cases of clients paying almost the same amount in life insurance that they're paying in the loan. So it can add up, and it can be a big expense. So if you are 55 and above, I would try to have a loan below 50%, because this will save you money in the life insurance department. The other thing that in terms of the loan should be accounted for is, once you are a foreigner investing in Portugal, buying property in Portugal, you'll have what is called the exchange rate risk. And if the exchange rate fluctuates against the client that is buying the property, if he was earning 10K per month, but the exchange rate does fluctuate quite a lot, once he transfers the money to euros, he can only have 6K, for instance. So banks are wary and aware of this, and they usually do the risk assessment considering the exchange rate fluctuation and the risk that this imposes on the loan. The other thing that is important is if you are requesting a loan, the property will need to be evaluated. So the bank knows if you are not overpaying and if the pricing of the property is indeed correct. If, for instance, the evaluation of the property comes below, the bank will only lend money into the maximum of the property evaluation. So this is something that the client should be aware, is that if you are requesting a loan, the first thing that you should do, instead of starting the property the property hunt, you should indeed look into or talk with a bank or with a mortgage broker to see how much money will they lend you. So at least you'll have an idea, a ballpark of how expensive can you go in terms of the property. Yeah. Some people do the opposite. They start home hunting and then they talk with a bank and they see that they don't have the financial capability of going as high as they wished in terms of the properties that they want to buy. So if you do, or if you're not, the client is not buying cash, my advice is first talk with the bank and then do the property hunts, because at least you'll have a ballpark of the value of the amounts that you will be able to pay into the property.
That's great advice. If I may make a little plug there for Jacqueline Moulin, our mortgage specialist, in our business directory, she's great like that, and she will give you, if you start a conversation with her, so drop her an email and become aware of exactly what you'll be able to borrow with her, and she'll be able to give you a good picture on that. And also, if I could rewind you just a little bit, Daniel, because I was thinking of Spartan FX, our currency folks. The figure you mentioned about €6,000, I wasn't quite sure what that meant. Could you help me out with that?
It was just a matter of an example. For instance, if a client is earning 10K in US, correct? And he transfers the money, that would be around 10.5K in euro. Well, I don't know the exchange rate at the current moment, but let's put it au pair. 10. Let's do. Since the euro does rise in the exchange rate, instead of 10K in euros, he will only be able to put 6K in Portugal just because of the exchange rate fluctuation. So he will still be earning the same amount in the US. Everything is going well with his life in the US, but because of the exchange rate risk, the money that will be put in Portugal will be less. And this is accounted for in terms of the loan. And this is why usually banks will not lend as much money as they would if you were earning in euros or in Europe in euros. That's my point over there.
They're factoring that in for their own safety.
Correct. Correct. Okay. That's it. Correct.
Thank you very much for that. Brilliant. Okay, so that's working with the third parties, with the lenders, with the banks, the mortgage companies, and so on. Insurance. You mentioned health insurance and how much of an extra premium that can land. That's on the health insurance side. What insurances are required for the property itself, if any?
Well, it's property insurance, and this is something that I do advise clients to do from day one. Once the property is purchased, that they should hire a civil liability insurance, because if something goes wrong with the property, especially if it is a flat, because if it is a flat, if the wiring just gets into fire mode and burns the full building, or if the plumbing breaks away and it floods the building, this is covered by the civil liability insurance, and it's really relevant to have it. If you have a loan, it's mandatory to have this civil liability insurance. And if it's a condominium, it's a flat in a condominium, it's mandatory for you to have the civil liability insurance. If it's a detached villa, In some specific situations, it is mandatory as well. In some, it is not, but it's highly advisable. And I do advise the clients to have the earthquake insurance as well, because this is usually optional.
Yes.
But as the sad history of Lisbon does prove, we had a big earthquake in 1755, and a big portion of the city was torn apart. So it's the same thing as if you live in San Francisco. If you do live in San Francisco, please get an earthquake insurance. The same goes to Lisbon, although I never felt a earthquake living in Lisbon for almost 37 years, but still it's advisable. I do have it in my property, and it's something that it's not a must-have, but it's highly good to have.
Absolutely. And I think it was with Nuno who we would recommend for all of these insurances, Nuno Mendes at Winsurance. But I think it was in the Premium Plus call, which follows this one last week, that he mentioned, or somebody, an American said to us that their earthquake insurance in San Francisco was $600 a month.
Well,
it's a little bit better value. Nuno was telling us.
Well, I can't recall the price of my I can't recall the price of my property, but I think it's around 450 per year. So,
for the year there.
Yeah.
Including the earthquake insurance you recommend?
Correct.
Good.
Yes,
okay.
Yes, 450. It's a detached house. It's not an apartment. And it is around 450 euros per year.
Right. I'd like to go to some questions, but not until you're happy with everything you wanted to share with us, Daniel.
Well, I think that the main topics are covered. The promissory note is indeed an important document, and I'll cover a few more details on that. Usually, on the promissory note is the document that the general terms and conditions of the deal will be laid out. So, closing window. In Portugal, we usually work with a closing window, although a specific closing date can be defined straight away from the promissory note. But the usual norm is that you define that you'll do the closing within a month or within 2 months. Clients that are buying the property should expect some delays in terms of the documents to be obtained from the seller or the realtors, because there's an unfortunate tradition in Portugal to first you put the property on the market, and then you think about the documents of the property. So I would say 50% of times the lawyers send an email to the realtors or the sellers and request the usual checklist of the documents, and they say, oh, we need to obtain that one and to renew that one and to go into the municipality and obtain the other document that you just requested. So do expect that people will put properties in the market and they don't have obtained the documents yet. This is an unfortunate tradition in Portugal, but it is what it is. And the other factor is indeed having the documents looked into or having the documents assessed by a professional. I do think it's quite important, because some people or I would say that some realtors are in the market, they don't care what they are selling and the product that they are selling, they just want the commission. And they try to be pushy and push a deal forward. And if all goes south, and if the property that was acquired is not what the seller was expecting, or the buyer, I'm sorry, was expecting, some realtors will wash their hands and say, well, this is not my problem. I don't have any responsibility on this. I just advertise homes. So although not all professionals in the market are like this, but there are some unfortunate professionals in the market because it was not regulated. And this is the other topic that I wanted to touch. The Portuguese government just passed a law that education will be mandatory for realtors. So you'll have, it seems like it is a one-year course or some type of education that will be mandatory for realtors. And I do welcome this law because it will make a difference in the market. Because it's really easy to enter into the property market. You just need to knock on a real estate agency and say, I want to work with you, and the majority of the real estate agencies will welcome you, because it will be one extra person just visiting properties and doing advertisements. So there is no barrier to entry the market as a realtor, and this may become problematic because it is an area that deals with a lot of money, and it may attract some people that will not be prepared to do the property deals.
Thank you for that. I hadn't heard that. Hot off the press then. And so, Daniel, is that implemented or is it a proposal?
It was approved, the law, but it's not yet implemented. So it will take some time, but I do really welcome this because although it's not a big barrier of entry, it will, in my perspective, it will do the difference because at least some education will be put forward for the realtors to know what is a tax registry, what is a land registry, what is needed from the municipality, what are they able to do, what is the responsibility of the seller. So this in my view is an important step, and I do welcome the new law, although it could be even better than that, but at least it's something, and it will provide a bit more, it will clear the market out of people that are just opportunistic in the trade.
Absolutely. I have heard a little quip that there are 10 million real estate agents in Portugal. that includes the kids as well. So that is good news. And if I may be so bold as to welcome that on behalf of this community as well, it can only be a good thing. I think a little bit of a barrier of professionalism or added professionalism into the mix there. That's great news. Thank you for sharing that. So let's go to some of the questions. John was in early with this. You mentioned apartments before, and we've talked about this situation with the alojamento local, the AL licenses and what's going on there. I think that's what this is about. Can I ask your advice, says John, regarding purchasing a property with a touristic license? There seems to be a number of concerns. It seems that many of these contracts are inadmissible or illegal in nature. It's also become a political issue by its very nature. Your thoughts on this? There's a few levels to this, aren't there?
Yeah, well, I do need to correct myself.
Oh,
because in one of I can't recall if it was in one of the webinars or one of the morning programs, I did say that properties, once they are transferred, the AL licensing needs to be requested again. This is only a reality for Lisbon because of the containment zones, and for Porto in the containment zones as well, although they are suspended at the current moment in Porto. But for instance, if it's in Tomar and the property has an AL licensing, the new holder of the property, the buyer, can transfer the licensing to them. And I said this, or I said that the licenses were not transferable on a general fashion, but I do need to correct myself because this is the reality in Lisbon, and I should have stated that this is the Lisbon reality. In the rest of the country, that they don't have the containment zones. If you buy a property with an AL licensing, it can be transferred. So I would like to do that correction publicly because it was not clear on my part, this topic.
Thank you for that.
In terms of the AL licensing, it does vary a lot from municipality, and what it varies is the fees that the municipality will charge and the property inspection from the municipality. In some municipalities, we have requested the licensing 1 or 2 years ago, and the inspection has not yet occurred. In some other municipalities, they will do the property inspection within a month. So this varies quite a lot. But if in terms of the legality of the licensing, there is a web portal with all the AL licensing registries in Portugal. So this can be verified online quite easily within 30 seconds or a minute. So the legality, if someone is claiming that they have an AL licensing, this can be verified in, I would say, 30 seconds with a few clicks in the correct web portal. If someone is selling a property with an AL licensing in Lisbon and is stating that they will transfer the license, they are lying or they just don't know the Portuguese law. If it's outside Lisbon, the licensing will be transferred, and you can indeed verify if there's an existing licensing in place, because this is a public data and it's publicized on a web portal. So I don't know if this does reply fully to the question. The main preoccupation, in my view, once someone is buying a property is, does that municipality have a containment zone? The majority of municipalities in Portugal will not have containment zones for AL licensing. And the second aspect out of it does have a AL licensing. we should do the transfer once the property is acquired. Those are the two factors that I would mention.
Yeah, John was, I think, alluding to the politics around this and some of the shocks that people were receiving about how if that was an income stream for them, it could be terminated at a moment's notice. And that is a part of his question. Can the
I'll address that.
Yeah, because it's a hot topic right now.
Yeah, it is. We did cover that before, but I will address that again. So the AL licensing at the current moment and the problems that were disclosed do arise from a decision from our Supreme Court. And basically what the Supreme Court did was the court decisions in this, they decided to standardize the decisions of the courts with a decision that the courts below them, so the first courts and the second courts will need to follow. And what they basically said was that if one of the property owners within a condominium wants to oppose to the presence of an AL in Portugal, they can do it. And this was not the perspective on the law that the majority of the courts were having. So it would need to be a nuisance. The AL would need to create a problem into the building, and the condominium would need to put a warning or would need to have a meeting to discuss the problems that the AL was creating, and the property owner would need to, or would be allowed to have an effort to correct the problems that the AL was creating. And the last resort situation was the license removal. So it was considered as a last resort situation. With this decision from the court, it seems that this is not the last resort option, and the AL can be fought in court by just one of the condominium holders or the property owners. So this, in my perspective, will create a big problem for the Portuguese courts because, especially in condominiums, people are a bit petty, I would say, and they will go to court for petty reasons. Yeah. So we do condominium meetings for our clients, although it's not the funnest thing to do because it's indeed. Yeah, people will discuss on the most varied topics that they shouldn't, but well, it is what it is. Yep. Regarding the AL, this is the current state of events. If one of the condominium property owners wishes to fight the AL presence in that building, he can go to court and he can try to do it. There is a strong opposition to this court decision, and in my view, the law will eventually be changed. But this did create uncertainty in the AL industry and people buying properties to put on the AL markets. Yes. But if you are buying a detached property with condominium, so if it doesn't have what we call here in Portugal horizontal property, this is not a problem. You can have AL and no one can oppose to it because it's your own property without a condominium. Yes. If on the other side it has a condominium and horizontal property, this may be problematic until either the law is changed or we get our courts even more filled than they are at the current moment.
Very good, Daniel. And I recognize that not everybody is interested in AL here, but I've just got one more point to add on that. Jerry and I were talking to a condominium management company who we're vetting, who may be of some interest to people coming to Portugal, and to have that service of condominium management, if their property is part of one, and the accounting and finance stuff that goes with it. But what they very brilliantly said, that one approach with these situations is that the people with AL licenses might negotiate with their neighbors who don't have AL licenses to pay more than their fair share of the service charges. That would be a good mediation that this company is suggesting. And that would be legal to do that, right?
That's actually in the law. The AL law does envision that, and the condominium quota can be increased by the decision of the condominium to someone that has the AL licensing. And I do think that this is a fair game, and it does make sense, because one thing is to have this family of 4 living in a flat that they are either renting the property or they are the property owners. And if you are a property owner, you will take care of the building, you will be quieter, you will just not make a fuss. If you are someone that comes to visit Lisbon and you are doing a bachelor party in a property, well, then you'll make a fuss, you'll make more noise, you'll travel more in the lift and all that. So I do think it's fair that AL properties will eventually pay more towards the condominium expenses, because it will put, I wouldn't say a burden, but it will be more intensive in the property, the presence of the AL over there. So that I do think it's a good decision on the Portuguese law.
Very good. That's for you, John, and anyone else who's considering AL as a route for investment here into Portugal, of course. Thank you for your kind comments, Ignace, there from Utrecht this evening. A quickie from Stephen. Who picks the notary, the buyer or the seller?
As a good lawyer, I'll say it depends. If you have a loan, usually the bank will be the one picking the notary. So if a loan is involved, usually banks will decide which notary will be used.
Yes.
If no loan is involved, usually the buyer is the one selecting the notary. But the notary, this is a tradition in Portugal, I would say. The notary is within the same municipality where the property is located. Although this is just a tradition, nothing is written in the law. I've done deeds in Lisbon that were from properties in Porto, or actually the opposite. Because if, for instance, the property is in Douro Valley, but the seller is in Lisbon, and I'm representing the buyer, no point in the buyer and me going into Douro Valley to do a property deal when everyone can do it on a notary in Lisbon. So the rule of thumb is that the buyer is the one selecting the notary, and that the notary is within the municipality of the property that is going to be purchased, but other solutions may be found.
Very good. It depends, Stephen. Excellent answer. And on the circumstances there. Keep hearing. This had to come up tonight, of course, when buying property. Thank you, Amit. Thank you for being here. Thank you for asking this question tonight. Keep hearing about properties inherited by multiple heirs, some of whom, yes, you knew it was going to happen. You knew we would be asked this tonight, Daniel. Some of whom may be out of the country or unreachable, untraceable even. How does a buyer deal with the potential issue of another owner showing up after the sale? My question to you, to go with that, Daniel, what is the most people you've dealt with in the seller's party?
I think it was about 17. It was nightmarish. Yeah, it was a big table and on a notary with a lot of people, and the room was not big enough for everyone. So we would have people circling, entering the room, signing the deed, and getting out, and just going in circles in this. So I think it was about 17, if my memory stands correct.
How do you deal with it? Like that, I guess. You do the sort of the seller's hokey cokey, and you come in the room and you go out again.
Well, that's basically it. And you'll need to have either everyone present on the same day, which is a bit difficult, or the usual advice that I do have is that the sellers should have one or two lawyers or even family members that will represent them in the sale. So you can just pass a POA, a power of attorney, to someone to represent you. And if you have 10 family members that all trust each other and they trust one family member, they should have a POA into that person. So this person is the one representing everyone in the sale. If you cannot find some of the heirs, or if the heirs do live outside of Portugal and then they don't have the property, the Portuguese tax number, the NIF, then this is an unsolvable problem. I'm sorry, because you simply cannot acquire a property if all the heirs do not agree with the sale. That's basically it. So, but you won't have the risk of buying a property and then someone coming and stating, well, this property was mine, because you'll have at least the notary doing the due diligence on the property documents. And unless someone did a crime, and this crime is when someone passes away, we call it in Portuguese the cabeça de casal. It's difficult to translate this, but it would be the responsible for the inheritance. So it's usually the oldest person from the family. That person will need to go to the tax authorities, and then will need to do a deed stating that I am the person responsible for this inheritance, and these are the heirs, and these are their tax numbers. And if by any chance you left someone out of this list, you can be convicted of a crime that is called false declaration. So unless someone did commit a crime to leave some of the heirs outside of the property deal, then I would say that this is a bit difficult to occur.
But it would also account for why there are quite a few empty properties around as well, because families can't agree on
That's it. That's it.
How much for.
You do see that quite a lot in the interior of Portugal, properties that are just run down because the heirs, you cannot find all the heirs, or they just cannot agree into selling the property at a given price. But even in the street that I do have this office, it's probably one of the busiest in Lisbon. You have a full block of apartment buildings that the roof has already collapsed, but the heirs cannot just simply agree into selling the property, and just the land over there is worth millions. So this does occur with some. It's frequent, unfortunately.
Yes. Okay. I can't believe it. We're almost up to an hour here, so we will close. No, it's great. I mean, that's flown by from my point of view. And as usual, always a pleasure to talk to you, and incredibly informative. When you purchase, Desiree, I think we covered your question. Do shout out when we go to the lock-in hands up session after the recording finishes. But I think we covered your question there about inspections and surveys. With JC, when you purchase the home, do you also own the land the property is on? In other countries, you own the home, but not the land it is on, which opens up the idea of freehold and leasehold. Could you talk about all of those things, possibly here as a final question, and then we'll deal with everything else after we've stopped the recording?
Yeah, it's in property you do buy in Portugal you do buy the property and the land, unless it is an horizontal property. If it's an horizontal property, you are buying the land as well, but a share of the land. So if it's 10 units in the condominium, you own 1/10 of the land. So if by some odd reason, and knocking on wood, you have an earthquake and the building just collapses, you will be the owner of 1/10 of that land. So the land doesn't belong to the government or any other entity. You are the property owner and the property and the owner of the land as well.
Okay, very good. And freeholds and leaseholds, when you buy in Portugal, it's yours forever, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay, because that's a thing for UK people.
Yeah.
I think one question that we should ask before we finish is the costs of your services in this regard. And so John and Pam are asking, what is the percentage cost of engaging an attorney if purchase is, for example, 200K? And what kind of contract should a buyer have with the lawyer? Which is, you need another lawyer to get the contract with the lawyer. Austin is asking that question. So could you address that?
Well, costs do vary a bit between locations.
Yeah.
Or not between locations. It does depend on travel costs. It's different for us if we do assist a property purchase in Lisbon, Porto, or Faro, or even in the vicinities like Braga for Porto, or in Setúbal for Lisbon, or if we need to go to Castelo Branco to the border with Spain. So this does vary a bit. But our usual minimum retainer is 2.5K plus VAT for property deals, and this is on the properties that are not expensive. For more expensive properties, as the responsibility is higher, if something goes wrong, prices will increase. So this does vary quite a bit between the property price, the property size, the property location, but I would say the bare minimum is 2.5K, although for premium expat members, we do have special offers, so do contact us on that, and do tell us that if you are a premium member, because we do have special offers.
Very good. That's a great note to end on for now. I'll end the recording and thank you, Daniel. If people want to get in touch with you, they're looking up Reis and Pellicano in the legal section of our business directory. Superb so far, as always, talking to you. I'm going to pause it just there and we'll go to the lock-in and the hands up question session and the ones I didn't get to on the live recording. Thank you so much, Daniel.